Hello, welcome to Miniature Realms. My name's Stuart, and with Bolt Action version 3 still causing plenty of excitement, Warlord Games very kindly sent me some Hungarians. So let's paint some Bolt Action Hungarian tanks.
Miniature Realms is proudly sponsored by Baron of Dice, premium wargaming dice. Over 500 styles, over 4,000 customer reviews. Welcome to the best dice on the planet. Now, before anyone dives to the comments already, I know these aren't technically tanks, but tank is a far easier way of describing them rather than an assault gun or artillery or something like that. And it means that more people understand what they're going to see in this video. So hold your fingers back. There'll be plenty of things that you can comment about, starting with my pronunciations for sure. Now, Warlord sent me a nice little bundle, including some infantry, some gendarmerie, which I haven't painted yet, and then this 40M Nimrod SPAA gun, and a 43M Zarini, check the pronunciation on that too, assault gun. Now, for those of you who are interested in seeing them unpainted, I did a quick 3-minute short, YouTube's new 3-minute shorts. Hopefully by the time you're watching it, it's working properly. They've launched it without really any of the back-end stuff going, so it's just uploaded as a vertical 3-minute video at the moment rather than appearing in shorts. But anyway, there's a link there if you want to look at that part of the video. So resin and metal miniatures, pretty simple to go together. I left the commander unglued from one of them. In the Nimrod, you kind of have to glue them in really. It's only heads to go on 3 of the guys, and the other guy on the side I thought I might as well just stick him in anyway. I needed to do a little bit of research around what paints I was going to do for the uniforms, so thanks for the help from my patrons, so Katachan Man and Paul, for sending me these links here. So this is Indie Rock Climbers Blogspot, very useful for helping me select a couple of paints for the uniforms. Then this is the Flames of War painting guide for Hungarians as well. And again, this is really useful. I tend to default to Vallejo for a lot of the military stuff, and they're just always fantastic. I use the Colours of War book. Hungarians aren't covered in that, but they were covered in this page here. So I'm using Model Colour Refractive Green as the main base coat for both of these tanks, and we'll keep calling them tanks for ease. I'm using them over this black prime, and I'm leaving a little bit of the black in between the sort of the panels, or just a touch of it. I don't mind it just being there, accentuating the shadows, so to speak. We're going to be covering this with lots of effects and oils and things as well, but this does help. We're also going to be covering a lot of this green with camo anyway, but I'm building this up with the airbrush. If you don't have an airbrush, you could pick a rattle can, and there's lots of coloured rattle cans out there at the moment with suitable colours for greens like this. And if that's the way you paint your tanks, fantastic, go for it. Give them a rattle can spray. There's plenty later in this tutorial that you'll be able to copy that doesn't use an airbrush at all, so plenty to stick around for. But like I said, I'm doing this nice thin layer all over, allowing a little bit of that black to show through to aid the shadows, and then we're ready for the next stage. So here I'm just adding a little touch of dark sand. I think the recipe on the Battlefront website recommended a 25% mix in there. I think I gave a little bit less than that in the end. It just lightens the green nicely. Being super subtle here, just picking out the odd little edge like at the front of the mudguards or the track covers here. A little bit on some of the raised areas of the armour panels as well. You could really go to town on this and full modulation, but I'm just being a little bit subtle because I'm going to be covering this in camo and things as well, so I'm just going to be wasting my time. Now, if you just wanted to go for the non-camo version of this paint job, so just the green, like on the box art for this tank itself, then you could stick at this stage. Exactly the same idea really here on the Nimrod. I'm just building up a little bit of highlight just to make it pop in certain areas here, so focusing on the edges again, just towards the bottom of that quite bulbous turret where the light might catch a little bit more. Again, not too much because it is going to be covered over by the stages where I do the camo anyway. We have the crew on both tanks as well, so I'm going to be using the Russian uniform from Model Colour as well. This is a recipe that I took from that blog website, just slightly different to some of the others that are around, but it looks close enough to the images and things I've seen. As we know, when it comes to all the different shades of grey or field grey, there are so many different ways of painting your World War II troops. As long as they look relatively close to what they need to be, that's all I would worry about. And this is just a slightly different green to make it stand out from those I'm using in the tank. I'm just adding a little bit, not worry about getting on their heads and things here, just trying to keep it off the sides of the turret as much as I can. Same with the single crewman from the other machine. I'm doing a little bit top down here, allowing that black to stay in just because I know it will aid the shadowing later on. A lot of him is not going to be very well seen sitting on the top there anyway, so I'm not too worried about the undercuts or getting underneath. So making use of that shadow as I can with the airbrush. Again, if you don't have an airbrush, you just hand painting these with a brush, it'll be absolutely fine. Now, while I still had the airbrush out, I decided to go in and just airbrush a little bit of white onto their faces to aid the skin layers later on. Again, you don't have to do this, it's just something I wanted to do. You have to be a bit careful, obviously, so you're not covering over all the green you've already done. You have German camo, medium brown and green ochre. These are the colours for the camo, and I'm going to be sponging them on. So this is from Knott's Hobbies. It's a sponge applicator holder for chipping, and they also supply their own sponges, and these are really nice, dense, squidgy sponges, which aren't so good for chipping and things like that. You want to use that kind of sponge that you have in a blister pack with your metal miniatures, but it's great for stuff like this, and I love having the two different kinds of sponge. So I've curved the edges off on this so I don't get any sharp, harsh edges. If I had it just as a cube, it would almost stamp like a potato stamp, a painting stamp that your kids have, like a paint. And as you can see here, I'm just sponging this on, and it's a really easy way of doing camo. And I decided I could go through the route of masking off with liquid putty and going through the different layers with an airbrush, or I could paint them on by hand, which would take ages. Well, I went for this option because I wanted to see how well they'd look if I did this quickly, use the sponging method, and it takes no time at all to do it this way. And it's great, and you'll see later on how well it works, and it's so much quicker. So I'm keeping a picture in mind, a bit of a reference picture of the camo, but I'm not trying to copy it exactly. Using the green ochre first, making sure getting it on the wheels and things as well. It could even go onto the tracks. I do paint in the tracks a little bit, a different colour later on, but it's just super simple, and you can go around sponging it on. Now it's time for the brown. Again, just keeping an eye on the reference picture for the camo to get something close to it. I'm actually using the reference picture from Warlord Games for their studio paint job on the Nimrod. And just splodging it on using exactly the same method, a different bit of sponge. You get lots in the bags when you get them from Knott's Hobbies. There is a link below if you're interested in this sponge holder. Obviously you can use tweezers and sponges and things as well if you want to, but they're not too expensive, and there's a link in the video description below, and you actually get 10% off if you order via the link, and it shows that you've come by me. But again, I think they're great, but you don't have to use them. There are other ways of doing it. You can buy some makeup sponges and just do it by hand. But either way, I think this is a really good way of getting a camo down fairly easily and fairly quickly. It only took me maybe 15-20 minutes in total to get the camo down on both tanks. Now I'm using Contrast Black Legion here just because it's really easy to use. You can use any black paint really. I'm just painting in the road wheels on the tanks just to make them stand out a little bit more. And then what I'll also do is just paint in a little bit on the tracks. And there's so many ways to do the tracks. Some people paint their tracks brown, some people paint them black. I've even seen lots of metallic tracks, and they wouldn't obviously be that shiny. But I'm painting them black on this one just because some of them are still black from the prime, and some areas have got a little bit of green on them. Being the body colour, the armour colour would work as well, as far as I'm aware. But I'm painting them in black here, and they're going to get covered in so much weathering powder and mud effect later on, it really won't matter too much. But black's just a way of taking it back to the same colour all over and giving it something, a little bit of definition, making it stand out a little bit from the main body of the tank. This is model colour German black brown, and as described really it's almost black with brownish tones to it. It's really good for chipping. Now I'm using a different kind of sponge now. This is the stuff you get from blister packs, just like I said, perfect for chipping because it doesn't give you such a solid colour when you dap it on. You see I'm using a bit of old wood as well. That's also from Knott's Hobbies, but you can use whatever you want there. That's actually a texture palette for dry brushing. But I'll pop a little bit of paint on there, dip the sponge in, dab it back on that wooden area, that palette, whatever you're using, and you can see how much paint is coming off before you apply it to the miniature. And I really want just really small dots here, and I'm just going around the rivets, around the harsh edges where the paint might run off and go back to the primer colour, and that's the kind of effect I want to build up here. This is black metal from Scale 75's Metal and Alchemy range. It's a really good dull gun metal colour, and it's just great through the airbrush. It's great on a brush. It's one of my favourite paints all time. And what I'm doing here is just giving a very subtle dry brush on some of those areas. I've just added that little bit of dark black brown chipping to, just to reinforcing it where they might have worn away. Now, you don't often see World War II armour where it's drawn back to the metal, and it probably wouldn't happen too much. I just like the way it looks. So this is a little bit raw cool here, very much an optional thing, but because it's so dull and so subtle, it doesn't look too bad. What you don't want is masses of silver everywhere, probably. I quite like the way it looks a little bit, like I said, but I'm being super subtle with it here. I am catching the tracks a little bit, but not all over and just in places. I really want to show that the paint is wearing away on the edge, maybe where it's scraped across some rock or in between some buildings or a wall or wood or whatever it happens to be, where it's been dinked and smashed about, rather than making it look like I've dry brushed some silver, because that's not the effect you're going for. What you want it to look like is that the paint has worn away and dinked a little bit, rather than shiny and horrible.
Excuse me as I interrupt myself and proceedings briefly, just as a friendly reminder that October 2024, so the month that this video is being published, I have started Patreon monthly giveaways. That's something that's going to run every single month, and all my patrons, no matter what tier, as long as they're paid, will be entered into a hat to win a prize. And this month it's actually a brand new copy of version 3 Bolt Action, which obviously fits in really well with this video. So if you're not already a patron and you thought that maybe you'd like to join one day, it will be the perfect month to do it and get your name in the hat to take away this bad boy.
Now, I've not recorded a full gloss coat through the airbrush, applying decals. What I'm doing here now is just adding a little bit of gloss varnish afterwards to seal those decals in as well and protect them. I'll pop a link in now to a short video I've got on how I apply decals. I do want to add that into this video, adding another 5 minutes or so, but it shows a little bit more detail. The methods I use for applying decals using microset and microsol, gloss varnish, matte varnish afterwards, and all those little tricks is well worth a look. So now it's oil wash time. This is ready mixed oil wash dark mud from Soilworks range from Scale 75. Now you can do pin washes, which I'm sort of displaying a little bit here by running around the edges. But what I'm going to do mostly with these is whack quite a lot of this stuff on, almost covering the whole miniature in oils, and then I will buff it off and clean it off later, and you get this really, really nice effect. Now the beauty of using oil washes is you can play around with them afterwards. They take so long to dry, probably 24 hours to fully set, maybe even a little bit longer. But after a couple of hours you can work with them in quite a good way, so you can buff them off, clean them off. But when they're dry, they look weathered. It sits in all the details, so it'll look like mud and dirt ingrained into all the rivets and all of the little crevices on this tank. And it's just brilliant for this kind of military modelling style of painting. So your big military modelers who build amazing kits will been using these techniques for years, and I know wargamers are using them more and more, and I just loved using them. And you can mix your own oil washes if you want to, and I do quite a lot myself, but increasingly I've started to buy these ready mix ones. I know there's a lot of things out there at the moment, AK, streaking grime and all these kind of things, and these are just another tool. These Soilworks range Scale 75 ready mixed oil washes are really, really good and really useful. And as you can see here, I'm just slapping this all over. There is no skill. You don't need an airbrush for this. It does help if you've got the ability to use one to maybe put a gloss varnish down, but if you leave your paints to dry long enough, you can put this on without a varnish, but you maybe want to be a little bit gentler with it, don't put quite as much on. So they are looking pretty wet and messy at the moment, so I'm going to leave those for a couple of hours just to get surface dry, and then I come back and start to remove it. So first way of doing it is just using a bit of old sponge like this and almost buffing it away. So you're taking away a lot of the surface area, but there's still a heavy filter on there. It feels pretty greasy. But you're taking any tide marks off, any pooling off, but you're still leaving it in all of those recesses. And that's a really nice effect in itself anyway, because it just filters and dulls down the paint, draws in all of that camo work and makes it look like a single paint job rather than something splattered along the top. And it's really nice and effect already. You can really see how easily it comes off those flat surfaces, but leaves it in all the detail around the tracks, around the wheels, around all those rivets and things. And then after that, I've got a cotton bud or Q-tip if you're from the States, and I'm using a little bit of Artist's white spirit or thinners here. This is actually an AK version, so it's made for miniatures. I'm just dipping it in a little bit of clean white spirit, drying it on a paper towel, and then doing vertical lines here. And the reason I'm doing those is because I want to leave little streaks on there, as if the tank is dirty and it's maybe been caught in the rain, and you've got that sort of weathering effect built in. And rather than painting in those streaks, I'm wiping away back to a cleaner surface. Again, you can use this just to take it off a flat area. If you've left it on a little bit longer and it doesn't buff away, or we want it a little bit cleaner, you can take it away like this, and it's super easy. What you can also do is use an old brush, and a similar kind of method, and you can actually shape those streaks by running along down by the sides of them. You can make them thinner, you can shape them a little bit. If you go too far, you can even get a little bit of the oil paint back on and actually just paint in those streaks as well. You can't really mess it up because it takes so long to dry. You can wipe all this off again and almost start again from scratch if you wanted to. It's loads of fun, it's very liberating. I think it's low skill. Once you've played around with it, you realise how easy it is, and just have some fun with it. Now you'll see there is a slight sheen to it. The oils do dull down that gloss quite a lot, but I am going to just do a faint layer of matte varnish, and again I'm using my airbrush for this. So just a thin layer over the flatter surfaces, and it just dulls down that slight sheen that you get from the oils. I'm just going back to the chipping I was doing before and just adding a couple of little extra details in. It's always nice to add a chip or two onto the area where the decal is, so it looks like it's not stuck on the top. It looks like it's actually part of the paint job as well. And I just did a little bit more with that dull gunmetal metallic paint just on those areas where the crew might be climbing over or touching the top of the turret, where that paint might wear away a little bit more. It's always fun to add a few more little chips here and there. Sometimes it's easy to go a bit too far because it's fun to do, but it definitely adds a little bit more detail and interest. Now with the tanks pretty much done, it's time to finish off those crew, and this is Dwarf Skin from a Vallejo Express colour. Again, if you're not a contrast user and you haven't painted in your skin white like I did there with the airbrush, you might just want to go in with a base tone of skin and then highlight it traditionally. I'm doing this method because I find it's quite quick and with a nice little effect on these. So just allowing this to pull into all the detail, smoothing around a bit, nice thin coat on each of the faces. And then on top of that, we have Vallejo Express colour, gloomy violet and deep purple. So the redder tone goes around the nose and the mouth, and the darker purple tone I tend to put it around the eyes, around the top of the cap hits the forehead where it's going to be shadowed a little bit more. Thin them both on my wet palette, blending them out. Then after that, Elven Skin, just to reinforce those highlights. It's pretty much just on the bridge of the nose, across the top of the cheekbones as well, just to make them pop a little bit more. Maybe move on and add something onto the knuckles. The crew of the Nimrod are done in exactly the same way, especially the guy that's standing up a bit more. You've got access to his face and his hands. The others, not so much. The guy right at the front on the bottom right there to our side, you can barely reach them at all. It doesn't matter because you can't see them. So contrast Garagax sewer here. This is a nice medium mid-brown, perfect for leather, and that's exactly what I'm going to be using it for here. So the crew of the Nimrod are all wearing these leather waistcoats. They'll have a proper name, so someone will put that in the comments for me, because I'm not going to go and Google that now. But just a single coat of this on those over the green already. A little bit of the light shows through, as they do with contrast paints. You've almost got a bit of a highlight built in. But I do come back with the German Camo medium brown again, and just some faint highlights here, just a few lines here and there, just following the detail on the miniature really, where the ridges of the fabric point up a little bit, just a line here and there, and it just makes it pop and stand out a little bit more. So we have Russian uniform, which is the same base colour here, and also some dark sand, which I'm just mixing into highlight. I've got them next to each other on the wet palette, slowly mixing in a little bit more of the dark sand. Not going too heavy here, we're just following the detail of the miniature. So using the detail of the folds in the clothing, picking those higher points. Very much the same along the top of the cap. I'll go back and pick those cap badges out in a minute with a little bit of the dull gunmetal type colours. But again, just following the detail, grabbing where the light would hit along the top of the hat. At the time we've added a little bit more dark sand in and a couple of lines here or there, and it really just starts to pop and stand out. Just as before, exactly the same method for all of the clothing for the guys in the Nimrod. So model colour US dark green here, again following the recommendations from that blog, just to make the helmets a slightly different colour. It's very, very subtle, there's not a lot in it. I'm just painting in these flat over the top of the existing green that's already there, so it goes on super easy. And while I was waiting for that to dry, I'm just painting in the hair. There's very little showing, so I'm just using Black Legion, and it's getting a single coat of black. That's all that's needed. And I just add a little bit of that dark sand into the mix on my wet palette, into the dark green, the US dark green, and I'm just sponging it on top of those 3 helmets. So you've still got a bit of the darker colour showing through. Simple as that, but it just gives you a really easy highlight. Another ready mixed oil wash. This is slightly lighter colour. This is grease. No gloss varnish or anything before these, just a little bit around the bottom rims of the helmets just to shade them essentially. And it just does a good job of making them look a bit grim and dirty and weathered, while the rest of the tank already looks pretty weathered. It would be a bit weird if they were super shiny. This is light sienna, so it's a light brown pigment, and I'm just brushing it into all of the tracks here quite vigorously, quite roughly. We've had a gloss varnish on there, it's pretty strong, and I'll blow the excess off. You can actually buy dirt and dust deposits as well. I've got some AK stuff which would be great for this. If you don't want unfixed pigment on your miniatures, I don't mind. I blow the excess off and it just sits in all that detail really well. Doesn't come off, but some people get a little bit nervous about having unfixed pigment on there. Of course you can buy pigment fixer, but it really does change the way it looks. I really like that dusty, dirty look where it looks like it's all ground in. Totally up to you. Just finishing off now with some mud effect. This is European mud from Vallejo. I'm just using an old brush and pretty much stippling it on, putting quite a lot on there, not to the point of ridiculousness, but I want it to look like it's been going through some muddy fields and some muddy areas, allowing it to splash up to the side of the tank, making sure it's all over those tracks, inside over the road wheels and things as well. You can build it up bit by bit and keep adding more as you wish, but I think it looks fantastic and finished it off really nicely. And there we go. I'm pretty happy with the way they came out, and it was a relatively quick paint job, and the sponging saved loads of time. Let's look at some proper pictures. Now, I absolutely love painting tanks, and I've shown similar techniques quite a few times before on the channel. I haven't shown a camo in quite this way, and I wanted to show how you could do it really easily using that sponge method. It won't be for everyone. Some people want to paint them on or use masking, etc. to be a little bit more precise, but I think once you've weathered the tank, covered it in oils and chipping and mud effect and pigment and things, I think it looks really great and quite striking for very, very low on the hard techniques. Now, aside from airbrushing, I appreciate that not everyone has an airbrush. Aside from that, if you use a rattle can and use those sponges and use your oil paints and things, those things are all very easy to do. The airbrush is handy when it comes to putting on those varnishes. You've got to be very careful with rattle can varnishes. They often go on too thick, that you can get some modelling ones to avoid using an airbrush if you want to protect your paint before using oils or streaking grime or any of those kind of things. But hopefully it's a good demonstration of how weathering miniatures can be not only really, really fun, but make them look fantastic for games on the tabletop as well. And whether these will hit the tabletop for games, I'm not sure. I'm not sure I'm going to paint the rest of a Hungarian force, but maybe I will. I've got some infantry on the go, and maybe that will be a tutorial as well. But let me know what you think in the comments there. I'd love to know what you think of the tanks and whether I should paint more Hungarians or move on to something else for Bolt Action.
Thank you very much for watching the video. Hope you've enjoyed it. Maybe you've picked up a new tip or technique or something along the way. And thank you for watching this far. If you've enjoyed the video, please do give it a like, comment below, subscribe to the channel. It really helps me and really helps the channel. Those of you who'd like to support it a little bit further, I've got affiliate links below that I've mentioned throughout the video, but affiliate links for Warlord Games. If you're ordering from Warlord Games, you click through that. They know that you've come via me. There's an affiliate link for Knott's Hobbies as well for those sponging tools and things that I was using earlier on, and you get discount if you click through that link. Mention the Patreon, again, link to that in the video description, so you can click through there and see all the tiers that are available, and then you will be entered into those monthly giveaways, which are always good fun. Be a wide range of things given away each month. Won't always be Bolt Action, sometimes it'll be fantasy based or something or other. Some things I buy myself, some things are donated by my suppliers and my supporters and my affiliates and those kind of things as well. So lots of fun stuff to look out for moving forward. But anyway, thank you very much for watching. Take care, and I'll catch you soon.